This one, from the beginning of time. From the beginning, it says. Hello, my name's Gavin. This is Genre Books, and this is the 16th of my bookshelf exploration excavations. If you haven't seen any of these videos before, this bookshelf is now a mess. Everything's out of whack. I need to put things in order. I barely know what's in there. So to remind myself, I'm just going through every single book. I'm going to then write it down, reorganise it on paper so I can reorganise it in reality, because I don't have room to take all the books down and sort through them. I think it's a bit of a mixed bag today. I found a little pocket of horror, fantasy and science fiction. That's pretty much a given. But some, we'll say contemporary fiction, literary fiction thrown in there. It's not really contemporary anymore. But I'm starting with non-fiction. Now, Debs from Rainer Reads Stuff rates these books very highly. I don't think I have many. I've got a couple, but I did get this one, Poststructuralism, a very short introduction, because it is written by one of my old professors, Catherine Belsey. H.P. Lovecraft, the Cthulhu Mythos. So this is not a hardback, it's a sort of squishy back. This is from, I think, the Canterbury Press. So I picked this up a couple of years ago in Hay on Wye. I have not read everything in the Cthulhu Mythos. Read a fair few, but this has pretty much the stories you'd be expecting to see. Dagon, The Nameless City, Call of Cthulhu, Color Out of Space, Curse of Yig, The Dunwich Horror, At the Mountains of Madness, Shadow over Innsmouth, Shadow Out of Time, Haunter of the Dark. It's quite small writing, and it's 600 pages worth. I'm not quite sure what I make about the cover. It says it's a word cloud edition, and it's made to look like it's a word cloud, but these are just phrases that have been chosen. If it was a proper H.P. Lovecraft word cloud, there'd be some different words on there. I can't see aeons, for example, or lambent. But there you go. It's a handsome enough volume. This is a bit of a rarity in my collection. It is an Ace Books hardback. It's the first edition of Patricia A. McKillip's Winter Rose from 1996. Book Club Associates edition of The Ground Beneath Her Feet by Salman Rushdie. Next up is another Book Club Associates, this time David and Leigh Eddings, Belgarath the Sorcerer. This is the prequel to the Belgariad series of books, which I read when I was 13 or 14 years old. If it's a prequel, I'm hoping I don't have to reread the Belgariad for things here to make sense. Because I remember those books, but I don't remember all the details. It's too long ago. So be interesting to know if anyone knows if I could just read this as pretty much a standalone, whether it might trigger memories or whether I really do have to know what's in the following series in detail to get the best out of this book. Robert Coover, Pricksongs and Descants. This is the first UK edition from 1971, and physically as a book has held up very well. I haven't read this. I've read Gerald's Party by Robert Coover, and I'm pretty sure I've read something else which escapes me. But I'll be happy when I get to this one. Back to Methuselah from George Bernard Shaw. This looks like a very involved book. It is 5 plays and a very convoluted looking introduction. I don't think they're making a musical out of this anytime soon. Another Book Club Associates, Gwyn Jones, The History of the Vikings. So I'm hoping to expand my knowledge of the Vikings with this, because, I know me Harold Hardradders and me Hardy Canutes and what have you, but I think it's got something about their histories, travelling to Byzantium and to the Middle East, which I know nothing about. But seeing as they got to Greenland and America, it's something I'm quite prepared to believe they were quite good at. And now a little pocket of horror hardbacks. And the book club associates again. Richard Laymon, Dreadful Tales. So a collection of horror short stories. First edition of Incarnate from Ramsey Campbell. And a couple of Stephen King books. A book club associates, would you credit it? Desperation and Revival. Tales from the Mysterious and the Macabre from Algernon Blackwood. So a hardback collection of some of his short stories, not in great shape. This is from 1967 and printed in Czechoslovakia, no less, but has Chinese magic, the Seafit, the Heath Fire, the Tryst, the Destruction of Smith, Special Delivery, the Other Wing, A Victim of Higher Space. There's quite a few stories here. From Penguin Classics, 3 Gothic novels, of which I've read 2 so far, so I do need to complete this book. It's got Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, Vathek from William Beckford, and the one I haven't read, The Castle of Otranto from Walpole. Oracle Knight from Paul Auster, and New Worlds. So this is a paperback version or collection from the New Worlds magazine, but this one from the 1990s. It says here that the most celebrated British science fiction magazine of all time returns in paperback form with fiction and comment for the 90s from Brian Aldiss, John Clute, Storm Constantine, Matthew Dickens, J.D. Gresham, Simon Ings, Paul DeFilippo, Ian MacDonald, Michael Moorcock, Kim Newman, Charles Stross and Jay Summers. So a few familiar names, but I would be lying if I said I knew all of them. So this will be interesting to leaf through. Everybody's favourite reference book time. And here is the Penguin Atlas of World History. Volume 1 and Volume 2. This is it says from the beginning. I'm assuming that's the beginning of history rather than the beginning of time. But from the beginning of history to the French Revolution, and the French Revolution to the present day. Now the present day in this case is 1982. To know what was what at a specific point in time is handy. If you're reading about the Vikings, for example, what else is going on in the Middle East at the time that they journeyed there? And one which I have read cover to cover previously, this is Musical Instruments Through the Ages. So if you ever need to know about the Aegean hornpipe or anything else, this is 1982 reprint of a 1968 work. So it says Through the Ages, but let's be frank, you're not going to find synthesizers in here. What you are going to see is the instruments that didn't quite make it to the orchestra, and everything else from different cultures besides. From Ace Books, back to science fiction, and E. Doc Smith's Skylark of Valeron, I don't know the pronunciation. And from Foursquare Science Fiction, Fritz Leiber, Gather Darkness. Gary Kilworth, Cloud Rock. Baudelaire, Selected Poems. What? I like poetry too, I just don't talk about it on the channel. T.J. Binion, Murder Will Out, the detective in fiction. So a brief history of detective fiction. And I do find some interesting things in books from time to time. This is one of those times. This book comes with the compliments of the Archdeacon of Wells. A book that is my personal white whale. 1,000 Nights and One Night. John Barth, Lost in the Funhouse. Donald Barthelme, 60 Stories. One day, this book will come in handy. It is the complete Flags of the World. From the British Library, Mike Ashley, Menace of the Machine. So a compilation of science fiction, this time dealing with the rise of AI, including stories from Ambrose Bierce, Elizabeth Bellamy, S. Fowler Wright, E. M. Forster, Harl Vincent, J. J. Connington, Isaac Asimov, C. L. Moore and Henry Kuttner, Brian Aldiss, and Arthur C. Clarke. A literary biography, probably a bit more of a history as well, Chaucer from Peter Ackroyd. Bit of a rarity now for me. Some books from this century. The Blade itself, Joe Abercrombie. And the sequels, Before They Are Hanged and Last Argument of Kings. And more modern literature. Don't know what's going on here. Nod from Adrian Barnes. And Julian Barnes, Nothing to be Frightened of. From Ian Banks, a thriller, Complicity. Fahrenheit 451 from Ray Bradbury. And more Bradbury, this time from the Fantasy Masterworks range, Something Wicked This Way Comes. Bit of old school fantasy now, Terry Brooks, The Scions of Shannara. Now, I have only read the first of the Shannara books, but I enjoyed it. It was very obviously derivative of Lord of the Rings, but I'm willing to persevere with the series, and I think I've got most of them somewhere here. This comes much later in the series, so it will be some time, I guess, before I get to this one. And finally, for today, some books I feel a little bit silly going through because I only did these as part of a book call last week in my timeline. This may be a couple of months back for anyone watching. Dante's Inferno. Heroes in Hell and The Gates of Hell from Janet Morris, C.J. Cherry, Greg Benford, David Drake, and I think a couple of other writers. Fritz Leiber again, this time Swords Against Death. Chucky from John Wyndham. Lost Continents and Hollow Earth from David Hatcher Childress and Richard Shaver. War over Lemuria from Richard Toronto. And finally, that book sequel, Shaverology from Richard Toronto. So, as promised, a mixed bag there, and I think as the shelves get lower and lower, the mix of books becomes more inexplicable. I'm interested to know myself what's in some of these now. We'll find out in the next weeks. Until then, bye.